Blessings to you, friends. Welcome to today's devotion. It is Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards the city, the guard keeps watch in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives sleep to his beloved. Sons are indeed a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the sons of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. Here we are with one more of the songs or Psalm of Ascent, and this one is, at least the title is listed in my Bible, God's Blessing in the Home. And that seems like the obvious theme is he talks about building a house and talks about the fruit of the womb and sons being a heritage, etc., etc. That the blessing of a family and the blessing of having God be a part of that family is something that people would have or should have striven for or strived for, whatever the word is. And this one is also very contextual, though, because if you read it in the 21st century, it does sound a bit odd, especially when you talk about the fruit of the womb, and you talk about sons being a blessing and having many of them is happy, it makes one happy. And then the last part of that last verse of you shall not be put to shame when you speak with the enemies in the gate. So understanding in the time when this was written, probably mid-millennial BC, somewhere, either if it was written by Solomon, attributed to him, it was probably written somewhere in, I don't know, the 1000 or so, 800 BC, something like that, 900 BC. The world was very, very different then, obviously, than it is right now. And a family, having a large family, having many children was a necessity as much as it was a relational kind of blessing, because the more children you had, the more free labor you had, the more they were able to help with whatever the family business was, to protect things, especially if you had sons, because men were the ones who were the strong ones, the ones who fought and the ones that battled. And they were also the ones that perpetuated the family name. Not that girls were not a blessing, but having sons and having boys was a practical blessing for the people of this time. In addition to that, girls were expensive as well. You had to pay a dowry if they were married off and things like that too. And then fertility was an issue because of the pagan gods that were worshipped for fertility. Going back to the very beginning of the first book of Genesis, God is the God of fertility, if you will. God is the one that opens or closes wombs, as written in the stories. And we don't often think of that in those terms today. And we don't think of God in the terms that they thought of God during this time as well, as being involved in everything that they did and every decision that they made, and asking God to prosper them in all that they did, because life was really hard. And so you wanted to have God's blessing on whatever it was that you did, whether it was family, whether it was relationships, whether it was some kind of business, whether it was agriculture, praying for rain, livestock. You wanted them to be fruitful and have lots of offspring, because that meant security and meant money. Having land and those things was very important. And so you asked for God to be present in all of those things. Whereas today, we just go about our day without considering God's being involved in anything that we do. And I think that it's dismissive of a God who does care deeply about everything that we do, every part of our life. He doesn't just check in with us on occasion to see what's going on. God is intimately involved in everything that we do. And so for every decision we make, major decisions particularly, asking for God's blessing and wisdom in that, and to guide you in the things that you do, jobs and things that you're doing with work, and certainly in our relationships. It doesn't mean it's always going to go perfect, because having a godly home does not guarantee Health does not guarantee prosperity. It does not guarantee that children will be that won't go off the rails, or even relationships won't be broken. It certainly doesn't mean that, because that is a byproduct of free will and human sin. But what does it hurt to ask God to be present in those things? To start our day by saying, God, guide me throughout the day and the decisions that I make and the things that I do and the people that I encounter, and giving me opportunities to perhaps witness to your grace and your love to people in this world. We do that, those prayers are going to get answered. Sometimes they're going to get answered and they're going to end up being those kinds of blessings. Sometimes they don't get answered in the way they want, and sometimes awful things are going to happen. It doesn't mean that God is not present in them. But to not include him in what we're doing in our daily lives, even into the minutiae. There are people that I know that have told me that they pray about which kind of produce to pick out when they're in the grocery stores. Nothing wrong with that. Not something that I do, but doing that more often in our life gives us a greater awareness of God in our lives, his presence with us, knowing that he is present with us. Is that a bad thing? Is that not something that we should all want and desire? Is a more conscientious thought about where God is and how God is present with us throughout each and every day of our life, rather than just perhaps saying a prayer in the morning or in the evening, or not doing that at all. Well, you're watching this devotion, so you're doing it at some point in the day, but it doesn't have to be just a moment in time. It can be done throughout the day, to ask God's blessings on each and everything that we do throughout the day. Again, even if it's just so that we are more aware of his presence for us. That would truly be a blessing, I think, for all of us. That's our devotion for today. Tomorrow, Psalm 128. Until then, be well.